It's time for the Ork data slate and more DAKKA war. All right, everybody, time to make the Warhammer community squirm as the Orks have finally received their Bad Moons tribe, at least in identity. So, Orks are back on the menu with the DAKKA. So, everybody in the internet is now broken because GW has actually released 3 detachments for Warhammer 40k. It wasn't just Orks, it was Custodians, Tau as well. Just so you guys know, this will be a continuing thing that they do. They will release new and detachments for the next 3 months. Therefore, let us all be excited that we actually have been first. With that being said, today we're going to talk about the overall general changes that have happened for Orks. We're going to talk about more DAKKA, just our first looks and guesses. But before we do that, of course, we have to get a shout out. Today's sponsor, the Baron of Dice. The Baron of Dice allows us to do our paint competition, so check them out. Love the quality of dice that they give us, so thank you to them, and thank you for supporting. And of course, Forge Fire Gaming Terrain, which is something that has been helping us with our tactical videos. And of course, they provide our competitive terrain in the Midwest, so shout out to them. Check them out in the description. Now, let's get into it. So general changes for the Orks. Right now, we have the Tank Busters and, of course, the Shock Attack Guns. We knew this was coming. It was actually funny for Ork players, for all of us who've been playing Orks the entire time. Welcome to you gits that are back because we also had this detachment. We knew Shock Attack Guns had already gone down 10 points in the past when we were already using them for Ludas and Dreadmob. So we're kind of like back to where they're at. So if you're worried about them being fried, they're not fried at all. These are actually back to an original point state. Tank Busters, we know they had to kind of go up. It was a little outrageous for the rest of the community. The fact that we were bringing 3x3 in just about multiple detachments, we'll just say, between Dreadmob, Tactical, and then people would even bring them in Warhorde, whatever it may be. I had on my Green Tide list. Green Tide list had them. So GW was like, enough of that. Let's get it out before it even gets on the shelves. So that doesn't mean they're not playable. A lot of the time, you're still going to end up bringing like 2 of these for the point differences that have gone up. So 2 units of these is still effective. And they really just serve a purpose that we needed for Orks. We're going to talk about what they do in more DAKKA. But all in all, another change that happened up with the Tank Busters Bomb Squig. So this seems very, very specific to the Tank Busters Bomb Squig, which kind of irked me because it's not looking like it's a consistent for like Bomb Squigs for the Squig Hog Boys or the Commandos that have been changed to this degree. And Breaker Boys, I believe this showed it as well. Correct me if I'm wrong since it's live chat. So yeah, now it says that these guys do it on a 3+. And what was the other thing that was annoying? You had to be visible. They actually be visible bomb squigs from the Tank Busters. So they were really tired of people just spamming. I think actually the visibility part might be true for the Breaker Boys as well. Don't have my phone on me, otherwise I double check right now. But yeah, nonetheless, they did make this specific for the Tank Busters at least, and it did bring a little bit too much confusion in my opinion, because why did they make a distinguishing here? And it just confuses some people that are playing casually and non-casually. So we'll see if they end up changing it for everybody, because whenever this comes up, GW has to go back and kind of choose, like kind of make it clear, am I going to make it all version of the bomb squigs can't be used 2 times, or am I going to make it just once, right? This happened with Squig Hog Boys when people were like, oh, you can use 2 because it's not the same wording as the old Tank Busters, for example, right? Old Tank Busters said 1 at a time, just like our current ones do. Yet GW, when they went and addressed this, they made sure that the Squig Hog Boys couldn't use both at the same time in an actual FAQ. So I'm just saying here, are they going to go back and make it just universal that all squigs activate like this? I hope not. But let's go to more changes that aren't really a big deal, because I think Tank Busters are still awesome anyways. The Ork changes, Ork erratas for Tactical Brigade. So now, instead of being able to pick 2 orders that you can end up giving, or listen ear tactics, you can only pick 1. You can only pick 1, and you must take a leadership test. Must. It's not a choice anymore. It's literally you have to take it, but you only take 1 mortal wound. So how did that make Ork players feel? Well, I have a little meme here for you. Ork pretty much dumping them and saying, I don't want to play you anymore just because that changed. I do not think it's grounds for that being the case. Something we'll just say that Tactical Brigade does that more DAKKA doesn't in theory do is give something like tank busters +1 to hit innately against infantry, right? And the fact that it actually counters the fact that enemies and vehicles have stealth and cover. So of course we do know that more DAKKA brings, sustain 2, which we're going to discuss here in a second. But some people also just appreciate reliability. So I don't think it's like rip the tactical brigade. I don't think it's dead in the water. Totally still viable. Some things that this detachment does as well is it allows you to play with your bikers. It allows you to play with your squigs, which we did see people playing with both of those things several times when we were going over tactical brigade. Mobs of boys, for example. So I don't think you're dead. I think if anything, we're just not going to be seeing the same basic copy and paste redundancy of 3 tank busters, flash kits, 10 flash kits, and then whatever leftover stuff you want to bring. In this case, now people can actually explore this detachment. But not giving 2 orders, in my opinion, was a little bit of a over tuning still in that case, because the reason why squigs were even appealing in some ways is because I'd give them stealth and cover and reroll charges and +1 to hit. So this still has to be seen what we actually do with this. I'm not completely dead on this detachment, but nonetheless, let's talk about what everybody's actually here for. More DAKKA. So I know it's pretty ugly and a little bit to see on your screens and your phone. Don't worry, I'll read everything to you. And you can check out our Discords or Facebook group or anywhere on the internet to find these. And so we'll discuss what we're going to see here. So let me pull this up and shout out to the chat. Whoa, to all you guys. Did I have PTO for this? Maybe yes. Okay, so DAKKA. The actual detachment rule is during your shooting phase, ranged weapons equipped by Orks infantry and walkers in your army have sustained 2 ability. Shout out to that. Then we have, as the secondary part of this, is while in the war, ranged weapons equipped for Ork infantry and walker models from this army are considered assault weapon abilities. Or actually, I'll have picked up the assault weapon ability. So everything on the wall has an assault. Now we'll talk about the strats, everything like that in a second. Let's just keep going so we can compile this all as we continue. So we have the Gobshot Thunderbust. This is an enhancement for dev wounds, and you also pick up the hazardous ability on ranged weapons for an Ork model. Then we have the Deadly Shooter, which is Ork model only, ranged weapons, and the bears have rapid fire 1 ability. Now, of course, everybody's already like, man, I can taste the tank busters with rapid fire. Now, I agree. At least one of those units can still be quite appealing with that. Nonetheless, let's just say you're someone that you're using your tank busters a little bit more passively, like you don't think you're really going to get down the range like that with them. Maybe you don't have that many tank busters and you still want to use this attachment and such. Guess what? Because you want to put something like mech guns alongside your walkers. Now, you don't get sustain 2, right? Just so you know, you're not going to get sustain 2 because this is per model basis. So your mech guns still don't get that. But you could, in theory, give a mech gun rapid fire 1 also. So there's that being said. Other than that, a lot of the other stuff that Orks are using already have rapid fire, so it's not really that too appealing to us. If you want to give it to Ork boys with shooters, though, it does help for the fact that, like, for example, your weird boy, when he jumps your big 20-man unit of shooter boys, you drop down, you're going to be outside of 9, so you're actually not going to be in rapid fire range, so you still don't actually give them anything, and they already have rapid fire 1, so it's not worth giving it to them either. What was the other thing people were bringing them on? Oh, and then another fun thing that someone, shout out to the big boss in chat, someone brought out that was actually viable, because those are not viable in my opinion, is the burner boys. So the burner boys, in theory, from what I looked at and what we were talking about just as we passed over, if someone can lead burner boys, do plain boys lead burner boys still? In theory, you could give the burner boys maybe rapid fire 1, unless I'm tripping here. And then looters are good. Yeah, looters already get an additional shot though if you're within range. And then we have targeting squig, which is the actual appealing enhancement here. I would say most of these aren't super appealing, other than the shiny shooter on tank busters. But other than that, giving something +1 a hit. You could give this to looters on another shock attack gun, for example, since looters are quite cheap and you can actually appreciate that, and it makes them not so useless when you're not shooting at something that's not on an objective. So that one is most appealing to me, just because it makes your looters a little bit more appealing than just like, oh, I have to wait for someone to be on objective for me to be useful. It's like, all right, might as well +1 to hit. It helps with everything. Then we have, and you know what also? It'd be cool if you could use it for like flash kits, but no, you can't use it for flash kits because they have no leaders. Then we have Zog Off and Eat DAKKA. This is the one where you can just fall back and shoot. No, that's not really that appealing. So yeah. And then yeah, targeting oh yeah, another one on the mech guns, targeting squig on mech guns. Yes, that was the other one. Was on. You can put it on. Thank you, Cody. Yeah, shout out to my boy. I'm gonna give you a little thing. Whoa, thank you. There's so many things to cover. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like you're saying, unless I overlooked it. Yes, you still don't get sustained on your mech guns if you attach a leader to them, such as a big mech. But if you put your big mech and he walks with the mech gun unit, they can all get +1 to hit. So that could be cool. Good shout out to that one too. Yeah, I almost forgot that for some reason. There's a lot of stuff they're talking about here. Yeah, only Painboy can lead burners. Oh, there we go. So then Painboy, you could give Painboy the shiny shooters and then put them on your burner boys, and then boom, they get rapid fire 1. So that's freaking hilarious. I'm pretty sure that's how that should work, right? Yeah, nothing. There's nothing that I'm missing that would say you couldn't do that. Not to mention, right? Let's say that you don't get the enhancement for this, but speaking of the burner boys, which I think they're actually kind of interesting in this detachment. Everyone's talking about the broken stuff. Around here, we're going to talk about just everything that's viable for every person from beginner to intermediate to casual to person that's back in the wall. So we're going to just cover everything that's kind of at least playable, usable, and really express the detachment a little bit more than, hey, tank busters and lootas, even though those are definitely awesome. So let's talk about the stratagems. So in the fight phase, Orks are still Orks, meaning for 1 CP, we can re-roll wound rolls of 1. If the enemy is on an objective, you get to re-roll the entire wound roll. This is going to look really good as we discuss some of the other stratagems here. So then we have get stuck in, lads, for in your command phase, 1 orc unit from your army until the start of your next command phase, the wall is active for that unit, even if they have already declared the wall this battle. Note, there's a designer note at the bottom of this, which we're going to elaborate on. This means that any ability that are in effect while in the wall is active for your army will be in effect for your unit. That means any unit that is specific to, any data sheet ability that is specific to a unit will still be in consideration. So right here, I have a slide that says more DAKKA. We're talking about, so what about the big stomp he gets? We have for Mork and the Gork, and you can see the wording and their rule ability from their data sheet. It's highlighted, and it says, as if the wall is active for your army, you get +1 to hit. So if you use this stratagem, that means your big stompy walkers are going to get their data sheet ability of +1 to hit, whether it's fighting or in shooting. And then what about Gaz? Well, as you see here, there's an FAQ that was addressed to us for Bully Boys. If you spend this strat on Gaz, Gaz will also get his ability for lethal auras continuously. Therefore, that's not in question. That's why I brought this up for you if you guys were wondering. A couple more questions were, if something has sustained 1 already, such as the flash kits, do they get sustained 2? No, they do not. Okay, just so you guys know. Now, let me continue to read some of these strats. I just wanted to clear that up for the Gits because these were some of the questions I was hearing from Get Stuck In Lads. So next we have huge show-offs in your command phase. 1 Orc Walker unit, excluding killicants. What? GW, what'd you... Excluding killicants? That was unnecessarily disrespectful. All right, so until the start of your next command phase, improve that unit's movement, leadership, to move, so not total movement, but move, leadership, and objective control characteristics by 1. And each time a model in your unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. So it's saying like 1 Orc Walker unit. I mean, did they forget they separated killicans? I mean, who else are they talking about? Like, who do they think they're talking to? Like, one other. What do you mean other, dude? You just excluded killicans. There's no other. You separated our Death Dreads, and then we have a Morkanot and Gorkanot. GW, pay attention to your own stuff. So you can't use this on killicans. This does mean your Gorkanot, Morkanots are now sustained 2, walking forward with +1 to hit. That's freaking cool and fantastic. I like it because it's Bad Moon style. Now, I still think Dreadmob is pretty sick if you're running like 1 Stompa and Gorkanox, and I think killicans are still exceptional there. So if you want killicans, go around there. But I like it because for Bad Moons, it very much is about they have infantry and they have support walkers, like in support. So it's not like everything in their army is walkers. Very lore savvy here to where you're going to have at least one awesome showing off walker mech get that's really running up the field with this unit. A lot of the time people will actually forget that these guys are transports, so don't forget that your big walkers are awesome, cool for that. Then we also have what everybody likes to adorably call the nuke, which is what I like to nickname the Death Dread, with 4 custom Mega Blasters, or you can do 3 custom Mega Blasters and a Choppa arm, for example, where in that case he's getting +1 to hit on him. So all of those guys are now hitting a little bit more effectively, and then with +1 to hit, and then they have sustain 2. So that can get a bit out of hand for custom Mega Blasters. Not to mention the other strats that we're going to talk about, which is long uncontrolled burst. So start of your shooting phase, 1 orc character model from your army. Select 1 enemy unit within 18 inches of your orc character until the end of the phase. Weapons equipped by orc models from your army have the ignore cover ability while targeting that unit. So at first I was like, at first I understood it as I had to see the unit, which I was like, okay, it's not that obnoxious. I guess I have to see you and I have to get close, so I'm gonna get devastated. No, that's not the case. I don't actually have to see you. Making sure I read it. I'm gonna zoom in on my own side. No. Yeah, okay, making sure it doesn't say visible anywhere there. No, it doesn't say visible anywhere. Therefore, someone like Snickrock can just be in there and be like, "Them kids over there. Them kids over there." And just making them get ignore cover and such. So it's like that's pretty could get pretty wild, right? Something like that, you would normally worry that it actually says you can actually see them. In this case, it doesn't. You don't actually have to see them. So an orc character that's staged up within the terrain piece that's getting ready to go on attack can give support fire. So when we talk about this stuff's going to get nerfed and all this change, that's one that I can end up being kind of reasonably changed if it forces you to be visible. Still very powerful. Does require you to be within 18 though, so that doesn't actually help us for like stacking that against maybe like Astro Militarm Lehman Russes, which is something that's specifically notorious to orcs, and actually has the range to stay away from this, or Exocrines. So those are the things that we typically would love if they ignored cover against, that have a 2-up armor save that we want to shoot at. Because other than that, between the shock attack gun and the tank buster and the everything, we're kind of going to melt. And the other strat we're going to discuss here, well, I guess that's be close to, between the pulsar rocket, and the shock attack gun, typically you're not looking like for you're looking for more AP downrange, not for the units that's specifically right in front of you. So it's like, because a lot of the time as an orc, you're like, man, I want to pop that Lehman Ruz, I want to pop that Exocrine, and you're like, only the SAG's really hoping to pop off here because everything else is taking a pretty solid save against. Not that it's still not amazing, because it definitely is. I'm just saying, because it has the restriction of 18 inches, it does mean that it doesn't let us like pick out those ranged units, which is good for the rest of the community to understand that if you have stuff that's still a range, we can't really stack. What comes next is super shells. So in your orc shooting phase, 1 orc unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot until the end of the phase. Each time a model in that unit makes the range attack, targets the closest eligible target within 18 inches. Improve the armor characteristics of the ranged weapon by 1. Okay, so like I was saying, when you're considering long controlled burst and super shells, and you're really looking for the target of this, the preferred target of this, which we'll say like a Lehman Russ, for example, or where I'm like, yeah, or what's that big fat dude, Turvagon, right? Or the big, I'm having a brain fart, but the big 16 wound Tyrannid monster, for example, right? Where you're like, I just want to put more AP on that, or a Land Raider, I guess. It's really about getting close, and something like a Land Raider has to get close, but those other units I described don't technically have to, so I can't really stack those against them. This ends up being like a lot of, the long controlled burst ends up being really, really good for reserve flash gets, or Luda's shooting at stuff that's in the middle of the table, orc boys with their guns, for example, themselves. And then super shells is really good for that orc boy unit that, like I said, with its DAKKA weapons, the flash gets themselves that we spoke about. But when we're talking about really just trying to stack against downrange units, we're not able to regularly stack these against enemies' preferred gunline targets. So I guess against enemy infantry, you're feeling really good. Not the Norn Emissary, because the Norn Emissary is standing on objectives and he is in range of this stuff and he's getting it, but he also has a 4-up invuln. So then you're like, oh, forget you. I'm trying to pick those units specifically because they don't have invulns in my referencing. Then we have call that DAKKA. So in your opponent's shooting phase, just after the enemy unit has shot, 1 orc unit from your army, one orc unit from your army that had one or more of its models destroyed as a result of this attacking unit's attack can shoot as if it were your shooting phase, but must only target the enemy doing it, and they must be eligible to be targeted. Keep in mind, you don't get access to your detachment rule because your detachment rule says right here, as we're looking at it, during your shooting phase. So during your shooting phase is not equivalent to as if it was your shooting phase. As if it's your shooting phase means that you don't have to shoot in Overwatch. You get to use your native ballistic skill and whatever your like data sheet potentials are. So what would be a fun unit for this, in my opinion, is still Ludas, because a lot of times someone's on an objective, you can do it. But a lot of the time, what is actually on an objective that's shooting at you? So another unit might be like flash kits, where someone's trying to chip you down, and then you just end up breaking them instead in like the skirmish battle on the edge of the battlefield, where they want to shoot you and charge into you, and then you're like, ooh, well, I guess that turned out bad for you. and if it's a 5-man unit, you can even pop off your lethal ammo runs for that. So that's actually where it becomes really appealing too. This whole detachment itself being released and GW not nailing us with nailing our Ludas or nailing our flash kits and only nailing our tank busters was very generous of them. Too generous, I guess. We'll see. We'll see. But in this case, for all the Orc players themselves, on what we've been hobbying on, we've been using consistently, you're like, hey, they didn't actually increase Ludas, they didn't increase flash kits, for example, so I can still use these units and they will be used quite often. And then we have a super chat from Murder Mouth. Yeah, I'll make it for my PTO. No, I'm just kidding. The $5 question for us all: are walkers mandatory here or non-mandatory? Non-dread mob can fit right in. That is all. Thank you. And thank you, Murder Mouth, for being a generous get like always. Yeah. As for your question, they're not mandatory, but it does bring up the question of how interesting some of these guys, such as I mentioned, the custom Mega Blasta, coming in by himself, kind of being equipped on your field, where he's like 4 custom Mega Blasters, and he's actually someone who would benefit from, hey, he can run up, get within 18 inches of something because his guns are only 24 inches anyway. So him trying to get closer isn't out of the question. To try to get, more AP on him kind of early game, some weird odd anti-tank fire. I don't think it's going to be like mandatory for the high competitive players. We'll find some sort of redundancy and pattern that we'll bring here. We'll find units such as Great WAAAGH, who is going to be fantastic when you tell him to get stuck in, someone who we've been nonetheless preaching on this channel, and he'll someone who might come out as mandatory, quote unquote. Luda's flash kits on the competitive level are going to be seen as mandatory, right? Stuff that you're going to bring in sets or duos and duplicates. So I don't think walkers are going to qualify for mandatory. I think that they have viability. I think they have utility. People can flex into them. People can find a way to add 1 unit of them into there. And I think the math on it, just increasing the output of this, almost doubling the output between walkers and their shooting units itself makes it interesting. Now, keep in mind, a lot of armies have built-in stealth in the game right now, so that does throw the math a little bit back. And people, I think that they undervalue, that was what was appealing about Tactical Brigade, is that like if I was shooting my tank busters, I didn't have to hope to hit a 6 to hit you. I was, natively ignoring your popping smoke because I was giving myself the order to +1 to hit, and then I was +1 to hit from the ability. Or the flash kits themselves, right? A lot of the time, you have a bunch of guns, but you're really happy that they're hitting on 4s, or if you're shooting at someone that has stealth, you're back to 5s. You're like, okay. But if you're just straight hitting on 6s for everything, all in all, hoping for just spiking 6s is very, very orky. But it's hard to say that you can, really, really rely on that as much as people were relying on Tactical Brigade's ability to just natively make yourself shoot better consistently and add a defensive buff. So even though this detachment is really offensively minded and aggressive and brings a silly amount of dice and makes us all want to bring a really heavy amount of shooting, there is a lot of argument here and archetypes that you could already kind of start to outline with Gaz, where you're like, okay, I'm going to have Gaz as a bubble of just lethal 12 inches, and I'm going to play the skirmish game where I'm going to have 5 flash kits here with flash kits here. Then I have the boys that also, for all the boy pistols are sustained too, which is silly. It's fine. Like, it's kind of worth shooting. Like, just pick up a handful of dice and just throw them. Remember that you can actually do it now. It does pick off some shots. It's funny, and it works. So or just how we were thinking about Tactical Brigade and this detachment. I'm going to just bump them both together here with the whole fact that I think archetypes outlines still remain to be explored. The fact that we're early in this extension of, you know, rules and detachments that are being released is only good for us. But I do recommend orc players consistently just go explore. Even when we make the video on Friday and I start to tell you guys, well, my list is 30 flash gits and 30 ludas, whatever it may be, and Zagra, go from there, just like everybody else is going to be telling you. Keep in mind that there's so much fun that we can explore behind this that is still in play alongside Tactical Brigade. So nothing's bad for an orc player on this day. Everybody should be excited to every degree. And it's funny because people are like, what about the Stampa? You can run the Stampa. I'll tell you what, the Stampa was already sick, bro. Stampa, go check our playlist. Stampas are already going 4-2 at GTs. So, you know, with someone bringing 1. So, I mean, I'm not downplaying you. I'm just saying that's how deep the Orc Codex still is, that the fact that people are like, yeah, but I can bring my Stampa now. It's like, you could have already done that. And that's good. It shows that there's a lot left to be explored on people's depth of what our codex actually brings, which is what we're here for. So we're going to help. We're going to bring some more videos on that, and things are left to be explained. But as for, oops, I went ahead. I didn't even need to do that. We already talked about that. As for what's going to be the best for this detachment, right off the bat, everybody's happy about the DAKKA. So the math says that we're putting out atrocious numbers, atrocious damage. In theory, the list looked kind of similar to what we've seen in Tactical Brigade, but just flipped right over, right? And if you're talking about the outline, so we'll sure to come out with probably on Friday, most likely is going to be our next video. We're going to, on this specifically with Mark Perry, shout out to Mark Perry, we're going to actually, you know, put them on, you know, breakdown was actually been used in depth because I have so many combos that are already just hilarious and that can already be brought to a fun degree and actually like efficient degree in margin. The fact that orcs can just ignore cover, I mean, just like a funny thing here would be, for example, you put a burner boy unit inside of a truck and then you pop super shells, right? This isn't like GT level, I'm destroying you necessarily, but your truck runs up with all its burner boys and custom mega blasters, and the truck itself, you know, is just going to be like, okay, all you guys get additional AP. You can just do some fun stuff like that on the side while everything else gets sustained too. So you're not even limited to, oh my God, I have to go collect, buy, print 30, 30, 30 so that all my units have access to sustain too. It's like, dude, there's just fun flexibility here. The fact that you have a wall on demand wall, that's something I've wanted for my entire you know, time of playing Warhammer 40K. Ever since I wanted to tell orcs that they could advance and charge all game for 1 CP. There's a chance that right after this gets looked at and everybody kind of does the math behind the DAKKA, and we look at how many defensive shooting buffs are out there, that it's not always as viable if the points keep going up for our selected units. Yet there could be viability in an archetype of, hey, I'm just going to be running, here's 1 CP, I get a wall for Gaz, I get a wall for Zod, then I get a wall for Maz and Squig Hog boys because they were so trash that, you know, they're still not good in this detachment to many other degrees, right? But you can give units advance and charge. I think a 10-man unit of Storm Boys, which we've always appreciated that, but a 10-man unit of Storm Boys running up outside of the wall and actually having a 5-up invuln instead of just being wet paper mache, now they're just paper, you know, is actually quite appealing to us. There's so many things that orcs should be grateful for, and I'm grateful to Bradley Given for my orders. Tactics arrived in the mail today. ... Yeah, are you discouraged? Well, you shouldn't be. Whoa! Now, the good thing about that is, you know, the amount of tokens you have be very adequate now, considering that we can't give 2. That being said, I greatly suggest that people continue to explore the Tactical Brigade because we've seen people use squigs, people use mobs of dudes. And you can't counteract people's built-in stealth or just people natively popping smoke to your tank busters. So there might be another, you know, sort of meta where you greatly appreciate them and want them anyways. And keep in mind, orcs falling back and charging is still pretty sick. And nonetheless, everything else we could do is really sick about that detachment. So no orc player should be sad or discouraged. Many combos that we can break down and what people are doing here. This is not a simply, I'm going to lay down all shooting. I think it can be identified and built that way, and then it'll actually still find success to a degree. But do I think that you have to be beholden to that? No, because I think most people's collections aren't 30 flash kits, 30 ludas, blah, 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 and whatever else they want to bring. A lot of people are like, I got shooter boys. You know, another thing that's hilarious that most people are like, I'll never use that for. Super Shells works on, you know, buggies, Coptas, You know, Def Copters, for example, Def Copters can appreciate long controlled outbursts. You have Def Copters that that ignore cover and then they get additional AP. They can appreciate that too. So of course we want to go heavy on infantry and walkers, but a lot of time you still need some scoring pieces, or you don't actually, whatever you own in your collection is to fill out this detachment. There's still other stuff you can bring that could be quite appealing. So with that being said, I think we covered that. Like I said, the questions about gas, of course, you get your data sheet ability there. The big Stompy Robots get their data sheet abilities there. And of course, it's the rise of the green tide. So we'll be back actually tonight with the discussing lists that actually did successful this last weekend. Now that we have this information, we'll be able to evaluate those lists and actually calculate what the point changes on those and how the list might change. And our examples might already be out there for the archetypes that are people are already trying to do, since people are a lot of the time are trying to take out flash kits, put them here, take out looters, put them here. But this is what we've seen even when Dread Mob was simply released before Tactical Brigade. There was something called the DAKKA wall for all you gets new around here, where people were playing Dread Mob and they were bringing 30 looters, 30 flash kits, triple sags already. The wheel goes round and round for the DAKKA. Everybody wants to make it rain. So there's only one thing to keep in mind is don't cross our wall, because we knock your teeth out. And tune in Friday for our stream with Mark Perry, where we go in further depth and break down